Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to stick to Japan and we're going to return to a brewery that has now featured on the channel a good few times before. Now, these guys are still a relatively new addition to the Japanese beer scene, but they've built up a very good reputation for themselves in that short lifetime, and I would say that they're best known for their different kinds of New England hazy, whatever you want to call them, IPAs. But we have had a few different styles from them, a couple of black IPAs, a couple of West Coasters, and quite recently an Imperial Stout as well. And generally speaking, this brewery is very solid all round. I've been seeing that they've been putting out a few sour beers as well recently, which we'll need to try. But the one that we're going to have a look at today is one of their latest releases at the time of filming. It's meant to be very, very nice, and it's a style that I know these guys can do very, very well. So needless to say, I'm very curious to see what this one's going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer, hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys watching enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head north of me here in Osaka to a little place called Hokuto in Yamanashi Prefecture, which is out to the west of Tokyo, and we're going to have a look then at another beer from the wonderful Uchu Brewing. So this particular beer is called Grand Cross. It comes in at 10% ABV, and this one is a New England Hazy Imperial Triple, whatever you want to call it, IPA. So yeah, this is another beer that I picked up at liquor shop Asahiya in Taishibashi Maichi here in Osaka. One of my kind of regular haunts, I would say here, but it's a lovely little shop run by Koji and his daughter Rika. She's doing most of the work these days because Koji is a little bit older. But yeah, they supply basically all of the Japanese craft beer that I review for you here on Rampant Lion Reviews. So check out the link to their Facebook page in the video description below, and if you find yourself in Osaka, do make sure that you go up and pay them a visit, because it's a little bit of an iconic shop, that actually. So yeah, highly recommended. Great selection of Japanese stuff and things from further afield. So yeah. As always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting though, just fast forward. All the usual links can be found in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Uchu Brewing before, and we will no doubt add more to that list at some point in the near future. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel. The support that you give is massively appreciated, and remember, you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography tagging system. So just go in there, use the little search bar, put in your hometown, state, county, province, whatever you like. If I've reviewed beers from the area that you search for, they will pop up. Failing that though, you can check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Japanese playlist along with a number of other things, and you can of course check out the playlist of beers from other countries as well, and I recommend you do that because there are some very interesting things on the channel these days. So yeah, let's go on to my brewery notes then, and I'll tell you a wee bit about Uchu Brewing. So, Uchu Brewing was founded back in 2017 by Masahiro Kusunose and Rumiko Suzuki. So they both came from a background in agriculture, and they first encountered craft beer on the US West Coast, and they found that they loved the different personalities that each brewery had, and they wanted to bring some of this kind of West Coast American craft beer culture back to Japan. So Masahiro is the main brewer, and Rumiko mainly does the kind of marketing and business side of things, but she does also take part in the brewing and the company's farming activities as well. So the roots of Masahiro and Rumiko's company actually go back to 2009 and their agricultural business. They started their farming activities back in 2009 under the name Space Farmers, and they grew rice and vegetables without pesticides, and then in 2016 they planted hops for the first time, and they've got their own hop fields right next to the brewery, and they often hand pick some of the hops that go into their beers. But today they run miso making and rice paddy workshops as well, and with the success of this, they decided that they were actually going to start brewing their own beers. So they raised over 3 million yen through crowdfunding, and this was used to build their own brewery in Hokuto in Yamanashi Prefecture, and much of the construction of this original facility was just DIY. They did it themselves. But they sold their first beers in 2018 and then expanded the brewery in 2021 with a second round of crowdfunding, which raised over 17 million yen. But the next year in 2022, they raised a further 12 million yen and used this to open their first tap room, which is called Roadside Station Kobuchisawa, and this is about 15 kilometers away from the actual brewery. From what I understand, they are looking to open up a second and bigger facility at the moment, so we'll just need to see how all of that pieces together. But the name Uchu Brewing literally translates into English as space brewing, and so most of their beers are named after some sort of space phenomena, like this one, Grand Cross is one of the constellations as well. So yeah, it's quite, I do quite like that. As someone who studied chemistry and then astrophysics, that is something that I do really quite like about this brewery. But as of December 2023, when I'm filming this review for you, these guys have produced around 200 different kinds of beer according to Untappd, and like I mentioned to you, this brewery is best known for their New England hazies these days. This is what they've built their reputation on, but you will find black IPAs and West Coasters and things like that from the occasional stout, and they are starting to do a few kind of modern type sour beers as well, which is interesting. So yeah, lots of exciting things to come from Uchu Brewing, I think, as time marches on. But yeah, that's everything I can tell you about them just now. If you want to learn a wee bit more, you can check out the brewery website, you can follow them on Facebook and Instagram to keep up to date with all the latest goings on, and you can check out the Rate Beer, Untappd and Beer Advocate pages to learn a little bit more about all the different beers that these guys have done. So yeah, let's get on then and have a look at the beer itself. So I'll just have a wee look at the artwork on this one before we open it up. It's quite simple this time. There you can see at the bottom of the can the Uchu Brewing symbol, which is great. You can see plain silver top on the can. It's a 350 milliliter one, this, which is quite a common measurement in Japan. But this one comes in at 10% ABV. It's a New England hazy imperial triple, whatever you want to call it, IPA. The hop bill in this one is Motueka, Nelson Sauvin, Racal and Equinox. So mainly a New Zealand hop bill in this one, with just a little bit of American there. So I'm curious to see how this one's going to turn out with the Motueka and the Equinox. So just to go through the hops, Motueka, New Zealand, 8% alpha acid. It's going to give you a big juicy kind of limey character. Nelson Sauvin, the classic New Zealand hops, 16% alpha acid. It's going to give you these kind of lovely sort of white, green, grapey, gooseberry type notes. Racal is an interesting one. It's a hop that's quite hard to cultivate. It's a very low alpha acid hop, if I remember correctly, like 6 or 7% alpha acid, and it gives you a lot of like kind of pineapple and sort of papaya type notes from what I remember, a little bit of mango as well. Equinox is an American hop, about 14% alpha acid, originally called Equinox, and it gives you a little bit of kind of more oily, limey character actually. So yeah, interesting hop bill on this one. It's not often that you see you know, Equinox and Motueka and Nelson Sauvin together, and Racal is a hop that you just don't come across all that often, I think, outside of New Zealand, because it is so hard to cultivate. The yields can be very low, but yeah, it should be nice. So 10% New England triple IPA. I think this is my third triple IPA that I've had from Uchu Brewing, and they always tend to be pretty good. So let's get it out into the glass and see what this beer is all about. And I can tell you just from the pour, this thing looks as if it's going to be pretty damn good. Yeah, that looks like a bit of a beast, to be honest with you. I'm quite excited for this. So, anyway, before the head disappears, you can see that this beer is poured with about a half finger of a frothy, I would have said perfect white head. That is fading away to a very thin foamy layer now, and you've got a big ring around the edge of the glass. You can see some medium size bubbles sitting on the surface of the liquid. It does get a little bit foamier the further up that you go, but it's not the foamiest of heads I've seen on a New England IPA. But this one is 10% ABV, so you know, kind of makes sense, to be honest with you. But yeah, that head is fading away now. There's not much in the way of visible carbonation with this beer, to be honest with you. It's got a lovely kind of bright yellow mango juice type colour. I always like comparing the appearance of New England IPAs to different fruit juices, because that's really just what their appearance reminds me of. But yeah, this one, definitely a kind of mango, pineapple juice type colour. So remember, the colour of your beer depends on a few things. One, the type of malts that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, length of your wort boil is also going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. But any barrel aging that you do or adjuncts you put into the beer will affect its colour too. But you don't often have to care about that when it comes to different kinds of IPAs. But yeah, the level of haze on this one is pretty damn impressive. Remember, the haze in New England IPAs depend on the oak content, wheat content, and to a degree what yeast you use too. So yeah, it can vary from brewery to brewery and even beer to beer, but this is certainly one of the soupier and gloopier New Englands that I've seen over the last wee while. I can't remember if the last one we had, I forget the name of it now, but we had another triple IPA from Uchu a couple of videos back, and I don't think it was quite as soupy and gloopy as this one. So yeah, I don't think we need to say anything more about the appearance of this one. It is kind of what you would expect from the New England from a New England IPA of any description. So let's have a wee look at the aroma then and just see what this beer is all about. Oh yeah, this thing is a bit of a monster. You can tell that just from smelling it. Yeah, aroma wise, this is just, it smells really, really good. Yeah, for me, the aroma that comes out of this, it strikes me as being a little bit more of a kind of wheaty leaning New England, but you do get some of the oaty creaminess and some of the barley malt as well. But I think it strikes me as being a bit more wheaty. I think we're going to get a good little bit of bite out of this one in the flavour, but we're also going to get quite a wee bit of creaminess. You can kind of smell that this is quite dense. So as I've said in many videos before, for me there are 6 elements to think about with the New England Hazy. You've got the sort of farmhousey yeasty character, the rye leaning grainy side of things. You've got the barley malt bread, the wheaty bitiness, the oaty creaminess, and the sweeter side of the beer as well. So yeah, for me this one comes across as really quite creamy and oaty and smooth, but it's also got a wee bit of that wheaty bitiness at the back of the nose too. So yeah, it gives you everything you'd want, and it is quite citrusy leaning, this one, which is what you'd expect with the presence of Motueka and Equinox together. You get quite a little bit of lime out of this. But let's break the aroma down and describe it for you properly in depth, and see how we go. So for me, the backbone of the beer, as you would expect, is that fluffy, fresh, white bready bread crust. I really do like how that pieces together in this one. So yeah, fluffy, fresh bread, white bread crust in there. On top of that, you're getting, there's little hints of woodiness and crackery notes coming out of this beer. But yeah, mainly it's a big, fluffy, dense, fresh, white bready character that comes out of this one. Yeah, so for me, the fresh white bread, the wholemeal, you get a little touch of a wholemeal brown bread in there, but then yeah, it's mainly a dense, smooth and slightly sweet white bread coming out of this one. You can smell the wheat in there densifying the bread out, and the wheat actually comes across as being quite smooth in this beer. And as I kind of discovered when I was over in the States in the summer, American wheat is a little bit smoother than European wheat. European wheat's got a little bit more bite to it, whereas the oats in the States are a little bit less creamy, I think, than European oats. I think they're a bit drier in America. So these are always interesting things to think about when you're reviewing beer, because this beer comes across, the wheat is very, very smooth, so that makes me wonder if it's American wheat that's in here. I'm really not sure how widely wheat is produced and wheat malt is produced in Japan, but yeah, something tells me there's a wee bit of American wheat in here. So you've got that nice wheaty, dense, white bready smoothness, but you're getting lots of kind of oaty creaminess out of this one too. So yeah, lovely kind of oaty creaminess in there. There's also a little touch of like McVitie's digestive biscuit, something like that. Wouldn't surprise me if there's a bit of golden promise in this actually. There's just something telling me from previous experience that golden promise might be working its magic in here. And there's a little bit of sweetness. So you've got Werther's Original, butter candy, butterscotch, and I really do like how all of that pieces together. So yeah, for me, the way that pieces together is really quite nice. Yeah, I do like how all of that just goes together. Actually, it's it smells really, really nice for sure. So on the on the malty side of things, I don't know if there's really much more to say about it than that. You can smell that this beer is a little bit of a kind of bigger, bolder beer, but that's what you want from a New England triple for sure. But on the hoppy side of things, I get the impression from this one that there's a wee bit of like, maybe there's a wee touch of like incognito or something like that, or cryo oil going on, which could be the equinaut. Because you always, if you get a very smooth green component, usually it's cryo or incognito hops that are at play. I can smell there's a wee tiny bit of earthiness in this one with the green component, but mainly it's quite a nice bright floral aromaticity. Again, it's quite smooth and it's not madly pungent, so that's worth bearing in mind with this beer. It's not madly pungent in terms of its green component. You do get a little bit of a fresher, grassy sort of note coming out of the beer, and yeah, I do think that the way all of that goes together is really quite nice. The green component suits everything else. It's a very smooth and quite relaxed beer, this one, to be honest with you. So yeah, on the fruity side of things, if you know these hops, it's kind of what you'd expect, to be honest with you. The tropical side of this one's coming from the Rakal. So yeah, you've got a little bit of, I do get a wee bit of passion fruit in it. I get a little bit of mango, maybe a bit of peach as well actually. There's a bit of that sharper peach coming out there too. So peach, mango, little bit of pineapple for sure. But then, yeah, you've got a lot, you can smell the kind of oiliness of the Nelson Sauvignon, the kind of gooseberry, white green grapey note. But then, yeah, you've got a lot of lime with this one. You've got the juicier aspects of the Motueka in there, and then the more pungent notes from the Equinaut. So the Equinaut, I think, is the one that's helping bring out the kind of the more zesty side of the grass and a little bit of the more bolder side of the floral aromaticity. So yeah, it's really interesting, this one. Smells like it's going to be a really nice beer actually, but Uchu Brewing never really let you down when it comes to New England hazies. We can say that with certainty. So yeah, as always with my reviews, I will say to you, take a bit of time to enjoy the aroma of the beer before you get stuck in. That's always half the experience when it comes to craft beer and whiskey and sake and things like that. But yeah, the way this one goes together is really nice, but I think it's time that we taste this and see what it's all about. So yeah, this one is the Grand Cross, a 10% New England triple IPA from Uchu Brewing in Hokuto, Yamanashi Prefecture here in Japan. Let's get stuck into this. Slanja, skål, cheers. That's really nice. Yeah, it's interesting. I wonder if I've maybe got it chilled just a little bit too much, to be honest with you. But yeah, it has this beer into the aftertaste. It's got a good little bit more wheaty bite than I was expecting it to. It has got a nice little bit of floral component to it as well. But yeah, quite a citrusy, zesty, kind of limey leaning beer, this one. Yeah, this is really interesting. It's quite different from the last triple IPA that we had, but pretty damn good, I have to say. And again, that's what we expect of Uchu Brewing. So yeah, it does. I would say that when you take a few more sips of it, it does kind of mellow out and sort of sweeten up a little bit. So yeah, I do like how this pieces together actually. Yeah. Yeah. You get more fruitiness out of it the more you drink of it too, but yeah, this is in really nice condition as well. As I've often said with New England IPAs, they need a little bit of time in the can just to sort of mellow out, if you like, otherwise you get a little bit of hot burn from them. But I think we're getting this one just in really, really nice condition actually, so that's worth keeping in mind. So yeah, I do like this. Let's just break it down then and describe the flavour a little bit more in depth for you, as we always do. So, middle of your palate then, that middle third of your palate, you've got that nice kind of fresh white bready bread crust just forming the backbone of the beer. If you move further forward from that, if you move a little bit further forward on that middle third of your palate, you get a little touch of woodiness in there, and you can feel that there's a nice bit of, you can feel there's a nice little layer of kind of Jacob's cream cracker coming out of this beer too, which is great. So yeah, white bready bread crust, Jacob's cream cracker, and then yeah, you've got all the nice kind of bready notes coming out of the beer. So above the cracker, you do get a little bit of a layer of like a sweet wholemeal kind of brown bread in there. Then you get a layer of a lighter white bread, but then you get the wheat, and the wheat's actually coming across as a lot more bitey in the flavour than it is in the aroma, to be honest with you. You can feel the wheat densifying out this beer, and also just giving you a nice little bit of bite to it, which also complements the kind of floral aromaticity and the limey side of this beer too. I'd love to know the creative process for this. Did they choose the hop bill and then build the malt base around that, or did they go with a malt base and then think, oh, what hops would work well with this? I'd be very curious to know exactly how they approach their recipe design. But yeah, on top of the wheaty layer then you get the oats, and you can feel this nice kind of dense, almost like porridgey smooth oaty layer going down the middle of your tongue. So yeah, there's a nice kind of, there's a nice sort of porridgey, oaty character to this one that goes right down the middle of your tongue. You get a little bit of sweetness out of the oats as well, and you can feel that as you move out toward the edges of your palate there, the oats just get that little bit drier. As I've often said, when it comes to New England IPAs, the way that the oats behave is usually quite a good indicator of how fresh your beer is. Essentially, the creamier the oats are, the fresher the beer is, the drier they are, the older it is. This one, I get the impression from this that the can is maybe about 5-6 weeks old, something like that. I'm pretty sure this is one that Koji got in the shop, Koji and Rika got at the very start of December, and they kept it aside for me, and I'm drinking it for you at the very end of December, so it's probably been canned a week or two before that, before it's gone out. But yeah, you can feel there's a little bit of that dryness of the oats starting to come out of this beer, which is interesting. You've got all the big kind of creamy factors pushing their way out of it too, which is great. So yeah, the fruity side of this one is really very nice. Yeah. Now the malty side of this one, I should say, on top of the oats, you do get a little touch of sweetness out of this one. This is one of the other things about this beer. This really doesn't have that kind of, there's maybe a little hint of like McVitie's Digestive Biscuit, but you don't have that kind of Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy sort of thing coming out of it that some of the other Uchus that I've had previously have. This one is more of a wheaty, it really is a wheaty leaning New England IPA, this one. But yeah, there's a wee bit of biscuit and a wee tiny bit of Werther's Original, like butter candy, butterscotch in the dead centre of your tongue, which is interesting. But at that, I think we've said everything we need to about the middle third of your palate. So let's go to the back third of your palate then. The border region between middle and back third of your palate, you get a little bit of brown bread on the base, the white bread on top. But and as I often say, on the back third of your palate, you're going to get similar flavours to the middle third of your palate, just at different intensities. But generally speaking, sweeter flavours come out further forward, more dry and bitter flavours come out further back. So yeah, you've got the bread crust. You've got the bread crust coming out in this one, so you can feel it's a little bit drier. You've got a good little bit of, you've got that kind of drier bread crust in there, a little bit toasty. On top of that, you get a bit of the cracker, which again is a little bit drier. Then you've got the brown bready layer, which feels a little bit taller and more airy, and then above that, you've got a wee bit of you've got the white bready layer, which feels a little bit lighter and more airy as well. And then the wheaty side of the beer, some of the wheat just creeps across into that back third of your palate there, and that's where you get the real kind of spicy wheaty bite coming out of the beer, which is really interesting. So, yeah, for me, the wheaty bitiness that comes out of this one, the wheaty bitiness coming out of this one is kind of lingers there into the aftertaste as well. But above everything else on that back third of the palate, you can feel some of the yeasty character to the beer. So you can feel there's this nice, dense, white bready, doughy, yeasty kind of thing. And it's just kind of wrapped. There's a little bit of a kind of brown bready bread crust in there. So yeah, dense white bready character. You know, white bready bread crust, as I say, and then a little touch of honeycomb wrapped around it. I always get honeycomb on the back third of the palate with the yeasty side of things for some reason, but definitely you can feel the flavour is a little bit taller. Then as you come further forward into the middle third of your tongue, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together, and I do think that is very, very nice with this one. So that gets a thumbs up from me as well. Yeah, so I think that's everything we need to say about the malty yeasty side of the beer. Let's go on to the hoppy side of things. Now, as I said, this triple IPA actually has a little bit more bitterness to it and a bit of a stronger green component than I thought it was going to have. And the thing to remember with IPAs is that you have three types of hoppings. Early edition hopping, which takes place in the first hour of the wort boil, that gives you quite a lot of bitterness and a deeper, danker green aroma. You've got late edition hopping, which takes place in the last half hour of the wort boil, and you've got that you get quite a bright green component out of that one. Yeah, you get quite a bright green component out of that, and it gives you mainly flavour and aroma. Then dry hopping, which takes place after the wort boil is complete, that's all flavour and aroma, and again it gives you quite a bright green component. New England IPAs tend to rely on the latter two, late edition and dry hopping, which is why they have quite bright green components to them. But West Coast IPAs use all three, and early edition hopping always dominates over late edition and dry hopping, which is why those beers are deeper and danker. But yeah, with the green component in this one, you've got a little bit of earthiness in there. As you move further forward, you've got a little bit of herbal character, and as you push toward the front corners of your tongue, there's a little bit more kind of floral aromaticity coming out of the beer as well, which is great. So yeah, and as you go round the front curve of your palate, there's a little bit of a kind of wet, zesty grassiness coming out of the beer, which is nice. And I think probably it's the Equinaut, and probably the Equinaut is the one that's giving you a lot of the kind of stronger green component here. But Nelson Sauvin, as I say, it's quite capable of giving you that as well. It's a 16% alpha acid hop, so if it's used as an early edition one, it will give you a wee bit of bitterness. And I think there is, with the level of bitterness in this beer, I think there is a wee bit of early edition hopping going on, which is really interesting. So yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about the green component. So on the front third of your palate then, and the fruity side of the beer, the border region between front third and middle third of your palate, you get a little bit of brown bread in the base, the wee bit of white bread on the top. The base, you've got that fresh white bready bread crust, the wholemeal brown bread, and a soft white bready character. Then you get that nice oily bubble where the juicy fruity esters just roll the way out of the beer. So yeah, for me, the fruity side of this beer, that is kind of what you would expect with these hops. And at the back of that front third of your palate, you do get a little bit of a kind of juicy passion fruit, juicy mango, and as you reach the middle, there's a bit of sharper peach, maybe pineapple in there. That's the Racal that's giving you that. But then as you move into the front half of that front third of your palate, you can absolutely feel the more oily gooseberry, white green grapey influence of the Nelson Sauvin. But then above that, you've got a massive kind of limey component from both the Motueka and the Equinaut. And I think the Equinaut just power. I think it kind of nullifies the Motueka a little bit, in all honesty. Yeah, the Motueka one The Motueka is giving you the more juicy thing, which sits above the Nelson Sauvignon, but then yeah, the big zesty, powerful lime I think is from the it's definitely from the Equinox, and the Equinox kind of pushing out a bit more floral character and a bit more grassy zestiness too. So when I think about New England triple IPAs overall, this is definitely one of the more wheaty, green and slightly more bitter ones that I've had. So it's quite different compared to the last one we had from these guys a few videos. The name of it's gone right out of my head, which is terrible. But yeah, it's quite cool to see two ends of the spectrum on the New England triple IPA from Uchu. But at that, I think we said everything we need to about the flavour. Let's round off this review with a wee look at the mouthfeel. So yeah, mouthfeel wise, this beer, to me it's kind of top end of mid-bodied, bottom end of full-bodied. Carbonation is quite smooth. Does give you a wee bit of crispness though, in fairness. But yeah, it comes across as actually very light and very clean, and I think that's just it's maybe because I've cooled it a little bit too much when I think about it, but also, as I've mentioned many a time, the Japanese water is very, the water quality here is very, very good. So yeah, the beer just feels very clean, and you'll notice that straight away with this one. In terms of the IBU count, this beer's got to be about 50 IBUs. I think it's maybe 50 or 60. It does give you a little bit of that lingering bitterness into the aftertaste, which is nice. And then, the malty side of things, it's quite, the malty side of this beer really is, it's got a bit of dryness underneath, it's got a little bit of bite in the middle from the wheat, and you do get a wee touch of smoothness and creaminess out of it. It's not quite as creamy and smooth as I thought it was going to be when I was first smelling the thing, but yeah, the fruity side of this beer, this is a very kind of limey, zesty leaning New England IPA, which is quite in keeping with the way the green component behaves and the fact that the beer has a bit more wheaty bite to it. So yeah, I think this has been a really, really nice one to try. So yeah, I think we can leave it there. This one was the Grand Cross, a 10% New England triple IPA, New England Hazy Imperial Triple, whatever you want to call it, IPA, from the wonderful Uchu Brewing in Hokuto, Yamanashi Prefecture here in Japan. If you haven't tried some of the beers from these guys, definitely do check them out. This one, when I think about it, actually reminds me of some of the very early ones that I tried from these guys, which were a bit more punchy and wheaty and bitey actually. So yeah, this is one that reminds me of a few more of their kind of old school things. So let's leave it at that. Once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comments section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Uchu Brewing as well. And we will definitely return to these guys again at some point in the future, because they are a pretty prolific brewery. But until then, check out my social media, check out their social media, and I will see you guys again very, very shortly. Slàinte, skål, and cheers.